When a woman suddenly starts pulling away, acting hot and cold, or throwing mixed signals your way, your immediate instinct as a man is to assume the worst. You think she is losing interest, that you did something wrong, or that she is simply confused about how she feels. But if you interpret her behavior through that surface level lens, you will completely misread the situation. Human behavioral psychology tells a radically different story. She didn't suddenly become distant because she wants to leave, nor did she become unpredictable overnight without a reason. What actually changed is something far more profound. Her mind just started processing you on a much deeper, more permanent level than she ever planned for. She didn't intend to get hooked, but now that it's happening, her internal landscape is shifting. When a woman begins thinking about you constantly, her outward behavior doesn't become obvious, loud, or direct. It's silent, increasingly intimate, and very personal. Instead, it becomes deeply layered, subtle, and cloaked in contradictions that most men completely miss. This is the moment where a quiet, invisible shift takes place beneath the surface. It doesn't come with a grand confession, a clear declaration, or an easy to read signal. Instead, it shows up as a series of strange behavioral paradoxes that can drive you crazy if you don't understand the psychology behind them. She will open your message the exact second you send it, proving she is glued to her phone. Yet she won't reply until 3 hours later. She will claim her schedule is completely packed and that she has no free time. Yet she will simultaneously find incredibly creative, subtle ways to keep herself in your orbit. She pulls back one day, making you think it's over, only to unexpectedly lean back in the next day with intense warmth. To the untrained eye, this looks like pure inconsistency, games, or emotional unavailability. But what is actually happening under the hood is an intense, draining internal conflict. She is trying to reconcile her desire to be close to you with her natural instinct to protect her heart. This entire erratic cycle happens because constant, uninvited attraction triggers an involuntary psychological loop inside her brain. It always starts incredibly small, almost imperceptibly. You begin crossing her mind at completely random, unrelated moments throughout her day. She'll be in the middle of a stressful presentation at work, out having drinks with her friends, or just grocery shopping, and your face or something you said will suddenly pop into her head. At first, she tries to brush it off as nothing. She tells herself it's just a passing thought, a meaningless distraction, or simple curiosity. But the brain doesn't cooperate that easily. The thoughts keep coming back over and over until they stop feeling random and start feeling entirely persistent. Your mental presence in her world becomes a permanent resident rather than a temporary visitor. Once she realizes your thoughts are looping without her permission, a massive internal alarm goes off because she senses she is losing emotional control. For the vast majority of people, sudden, uninvited emotional exposure feels incredibly unsafe. It triggers vulnerability, and vulnerability feels dangerous. Instead of moving closer to you in a straight, predictable line like you might expect, her survival instincts kick in. She naturally slows things down, deliberately steps back, and begins to observe you from a calculated distance. She is emotionally pulled toward you, but mentally, she is holding the emergency brake. She isn't trying to confuse you. She is trying to manage the terrifying weight of what she is starting to feel. Every bit of hesitation, every late reply, and every mixed signal you experience isn't a negative reflection of your worth or a sign that she is losing interest. It is a highly active psychological defense mechanism she is using to protect herself against her own rapidly growing attachment to you. When a woman finds herself caught in this intense psychological loop, she undergoes a massive shift where she becomes deeply internally engaged rather than externally obvious. Most men expect attraction to look loud and direct, more texts, more compliments, and more obvious attention. But the exact opposite happens here. Because you have suddenly started to matter to her emotionally, her brain naturally slows things down and forces her to filter herself heavily. She stops acting on pure impulse. Instead, she begins meticulously measuring her responses, carefully editing her tone, and rereading her text messages 3 times before hitting send, all because she is suddenly highly aware of how she comes across to you. She is terrified of revealing too much too soon. However, no matter how hard she tries to mask her feelings or maintain her composure, she cannot control her subconscious. Her internal prioritization of you will always leak out through undeniable, consistent behavioral patterns. You will start to notice that she casually remembers the tiniest, most insignificant details, random preferences, or throwaway stories that you mentioned once weeks ago and completely forgot about. She isn't just remembering data. Her mind is actively collecting these fragments like puzzle pieces, trying to build a clearer picture of who you are and what you mean to her. You will also notice her physical and digital presence naturally aligning with yours in ways that seem entirely coincidental, but happen far too often to be random. She suddenly checks your messages the exact minute you become active, or she enters conversations and spaces right when you do. This isn't a calculated game, it is subconscious prioritization. Her brain has quietly assigned you a massive level of importance in her internal hierarchy. And because her mind is constantly returning to you, her attention and her physical actions naturally follow that focus. Right here, at this exact crossroads, is where the vast majority of men completely ruin the dynamic and kill the attraction. Because her pace has become measured and cautious, men misinterpret this quiet internal processing as a total lack of interest. They panic, let their anxiety take the driver's seat, and try to force the situation. They start chasing clarity, demanding rigid consistency, asking where they stand, and heavily increasing the external pressure to figure her out. This is a catastrophic mistake. You have to understand the psychology of what is happening. She is already working incredibly hard behind the scenes just to regulate her own overflowing emotions and stay balanced. When you step in and apply external pressure, you completely shatter the safe environment her feelings need to grow. Instead of feeling connected, she suddenly feels exposed, cornered, and hunted. Under the weight of that pressure, romantic attraction instantly freezes. When a woman feels observed too closely and pushed for answers before she is ready, her survival instinct overrides everything else. She will instantly pull back and retreat into a totally neutral, cold, and highly guarded state. She does this not because her feelings for you magically disappeared, but because you disrupted her natural emotional rhythm and forced her into an environment that no longer feels safe to explore. Attraction that lives deeply inside a woman's mind requires an immense amount of psychological space to breathe, analyze, and expand. It cannot be rushed, forced, or pressured into existence. When you recognize the signs and realize that she is already mentally invested in you, you must understand that the absolute strongest, most magnetic position you can hold is not pursuit. It is a grounded, completely unreactive presence. Most men react to her quiet moments by chasing harder, but the high value move is to match her internal shift with your own stability. You respond warmly when she reaches out, but you never chase her when she steps back. You engage deeply when you are together, but you never overwhelm her digital or physical space when you are apart. By maintaining your own calm, rock solid consistency without constantly demanding immediate validation or reassurance, you allow her internal world to expand entirely without interference. You stop being a source of anxiety or another problem she has to solve, and you instantly shift into becoming someone she feels entirely safe thinking about. This deliberate restraint is what gives her the necessary mental room to transition from simply overthinking your interactions to genuinely realizing exactly what you mean to her. If you possess the discipline to allow this profound psychological process to unfold without disruption, her inner overanalysis will eventually slow down, and her outward behavior will completely transform. The frustrating, unpredictable push and pull dynamic that used to drive you crazy will naturally begin to fade away, beautifully replaced by a steady, quiet, and effortless connection. She no longer feels the subconscious need to test the emotional space between you, nor does she feel compelled to create artificial distance, simply because she has finally fully processed her feelings internally. The exact same woman who once seemed so incredibly confusing, distant, and unpredictable suddenly becomes effortlessly consistent in how she shows up for you. She begins to open up to you naturally, sharing her thoughts and maintaining the connection, not because you forced her into a corner, but because she independently chose it for herself. And a woman's choice, born out of her own free will and emotional clarity, is infinitely stronger and more permanent than anything you could ever try to control or manipulate through pressure. The very next time you find yourself facing mixed signals or a sudden shift in her energy, you must stop reacting to the surface confusion. Train yourself to look past the immediate behavior. Recognize the deeper psychological pattern at play. Give the situation the space it desperately needs and let her own mind do the heavy lifting for you.